Mark Tapscott. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Josh.
So the big story here is the House impeachment inquiry to President Biden. That's going to likely look into Hunter Biden's business deals. What were some of the main points raised on that?
You know, at the very outset, the first thing that Congressman Jim Jordan, Ohio, said the fix is in. And that pretty much described in 4 words basic Republican talking points throughout. Congressman Gerald Nadler, who in the previous Congress, when the Democrats controlled the House, he was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. His first sentence when he made his opening statement was, "Mr. Chairman, every sentence that you just said was wrong." So,
well, let's talk about that. What do they mean by the fix is in? Like, what's the narrative?
Well, the pattern throughout the hearing, and it went on for more than 4 hours. It was a long hearing. The Republicans would ask very specific, detailed questions about some issue. Mainly, did the U.S. Attorney, now Special Counsel David Weiss, who has been investigating Hunter Biden for these many years, if he actually had and realized that he had sufficient authority to file any charge that he felt justified prosecution in any federal court in the country. There's a great deal of evidence from whistleblowers and documents and otherwise that Weiss did not believe that he had that authority, and in fact was unable to file charges in the District of Columbia, tax evasion charges in the District of Columbia and in the Northern District of California. When he was asked about that repeatedly, 6 or 7 of the Republicans on the committee asked him about that issue. Garland simply would say, he had the authority, I gave it to him, and that's the end of that story.
I see. What about Nadler? You were saying the Democrats were essentially arguing that all the Republican talking points are made up. Was there any basis to that? I mean, is that the case? What's your take on that?
Well, it seems pretty clear that the one thing none of the Democrats wanted to talk about was specific details like I just described regarding whether Weiss knew and whether he had, in fact, all the authority that he needed. And the Democrats did not want to talk about that. They wanted to talk instead about, as always, Donald Trump. They also wanted to talk about things like the fentanyl crisis. There was some discussion about the border issue, very carefully approached by the Democrats. They didn't want to talk about anything having to do specifically with the Hunter Biden investigation.
Well, I want to hear your take on this too, because I was watching a lot of what people were saying about it, including a lot of clips. I didn't watch all 4 hours of it. But, one of the big things that I saw was it seemed that when Garland was pressed on, let's say, why he was not taking action, why he was not investigating, because he's being accused of giving Hunter preferential treatment, through the DOJ.
Right.
He kept saying that he's leaving that up to the special counsel. But the special counsel is new, Did he ever state why he didn't investigate these things previously when he's being presented with all this evidence?
No. He and in fact, he never acknowledged that anything was not investigated. The way Garland avoided making any specific comments with regard to those kinds of questions is he very simply would say, either I'm not going to comment because it's an ongoing investigation, or he would defer, if you will, to David Weiss, who conveniently was not present to be asked, well, Mr. Weiss, what about that? Weiss has officially said he will be testifying before the House Judiciary Committee, I think in October, but there's now talk that maybe that's not going to happen. And after watching the hearing today, I frankly would not be surprised by that.
Interesting. Why do you think that won't happen?
The Republicans, it's taken them, 8 months, but they really have accumulated, contrary to the claims of the Democrats and many of our colleagues in the mainstream media, that there's no evidence. There is, in fact, a great deal of evidence that at least requires a reasonable explanation from Hunter Biden, from the president, from David Weiss, from Merrick Garland. There's just so much evidence there that needs to be explained.
Yeah, well, so of course, the impeachment investigations, the impeachment inquiry starts next week. Based on what you saw today, where do you think that's going to go? Like, where do you think the Republicans are going to be focusing with that?
Not my guess, based on some things that I've heard and some of the folks that are going to be involved in all of this are saying. I think they will focus primarily on the fact that President Biden, over and over and over again, over the last 4 years, has denied knowing anything about Hunter Biden's businesses or his business activities. That really has become an untenable position to take, and I can guarantee you just about that the Republicans will hammer that particular point. This first hearing that's coming up next week, I think basically is going to be a review, if you will, of all the major evidence, what the Republicans view as evidence. Basically a review of all that. They're going to issue some subpoenas, maybe to Hunter Biden, maybe President Biden, and take it from there.
I could see that. Well, Mark, I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more going forward. Thanks again for being here. I appreciate it.
All right, Josh.
The Freedom
The dream that gives hope to us is as strong as it ever was. United we stand, divided we fall. That's my America. In my America, there is no left or right. We're all on common ground. Darkness gives way to light. In my America, you give more than you take. And when someone has lost their way, you lend them a hand and say, we are a family, together you and me, agreeing to disagree, but still live in harmony. The dream that gives hope to us is as strong as it ever was. United we stand, divided we fall. That's my America.
The new universe is perfectly pure and simply glorious. If, in a trying setting like this, a person can still keep his thoughts virtuous, if he can hold his or her ground against the onslaught of modern values and views, and stick to traditional ones, and if he still believes in the divine in the face of assaults from the atheist and evolutionary camps, then that person will fulfill his purpose to gain salvation and return to heaven. All of the madness now unfolding in the world was planned as such for the final phase by divine beings. Their goal was to test the lives here and see whether they were worthy of salvation, and give them a chance to, in the process, work off their sins and karma while going through difficult things. And all of this was done so that people could be saved and gain deliverance back to heaven. All of this is to say that the purpose of people's lives on this earth isn't to accomplish something in the world. All of the intense efforts and attempts people make in life, and their drive to get what they want, which can even involve resorting to unscrupulous means, only make people immoral in the end. The reason people came to this world and became human was to atone for their sins and karma, and to make significant spiritual progress. People came to this world to gain salvation. They came and assumed human form to await the Creator and His salvation back to their heavenly kingdom. And while they waited, they built up merit over their many past lives. And that was the purpose of people's rebirths. The troubled nature of this world is meant to make something great of these lives. Of course, there are some people who, when seeking divine help in times of duress, haven't been satisfied with the outcome and started to loathe God, even turning against Him as a result. Some have even turned to the demonic dark side and committed still further sins and made yet more karma. Those whom this applies to had best quickly come around and beg God for forgiveness if they are still to have a chance of reaching safety. Everything that happens in one's life, whether it seems warranted or not, is, in reality, the karmic consequence of what one did in one's past lives, for better or for worse. The amount of blessings and virtue that one built up in one's past lives determine what fortune is in store in this lifetime, or perhaps the next. If one lives a blessed and virtuous life now, perhaps it will translate in one's next lifetime into a high position and salary, or it might translate into different kinds of wealth and fortune. And this would also include whether one has a happy family, or even how one's children turn out, and so on. This is the fundamental reason why some people are wealthy and others poor, why some hold positions of high rank while others are destitute and homeless. It's nothing like the diabolical nonsense that sinister communism spouts about equality between rich and poor. The universe is fair. Those who do good are blessed for it, while those who do bad things will face payback, if not in this life, then in the next. For this is an immutable law of the universe. Heaven, earth, the divine, and the creator alike are compassionate toward all lives. Heaven and earth, just as with man and the divine, were made by the creator. And it is never the case that he plays favorites with some lives and shortchanges others. The reason some people lead happy lives and others do not all comes down to rewards and retributions for past deeds. When you see people winning or losing in life, it appears to come about in a normal way from things in this world, but it is ultimately the karmic consequences of those people's past doings. Whether people have something or not, or are winning or losing in life, is going to play out in ways that accord with this world. So no matter whether you are rich or poor in life, you should be sure to do good, refrain from doing bad things, stay good and kind.
He was never called. That whole time we were in foster care, they didn't even call the other parent. And I'm like, come to find out as an adult, looking back, that's broken. Because they didn't even try to offer another parent. What happened was I think with the survival skills that we had to go through in our lives at a young age, I remember my dad's family's donut shop. I still remember the phone number to this day because I was a daddy's girl. When my dad was at work, I used to always call him prior to, us leaving him. And I remember that number. And I remember seeing the mail from this foster care home on the counter. People usually have like those things with the mail in it. And I remember calling this number when the foster care parents would go up, and I would get scared and hear a noise, and turn off the phone. Well, one day they went upstairs, and it was a little bit of time, and I'm like, I'm gonna call my dad, right? I want my dad, because this whole time I still yearned for my dad's love and care, and we got taken away from him in the middle of the night. So we're still seeking, like, as kids, where's our dad, And we would hear my mom say, "Oh, we can't go back because I don't want this, or I don't want to be controlled anymore." So I never looked at my dad as being a bad person. So one time I finally got on the phone, and my aunt answered it at the donut shop because it was a family business, and they were looking for us, and they said, "Sonia, oh my gosh!" And I said, "Write this address down," and she did. And come to find out, from San Bernardino to Chino, it must have been just that drive time, and you had all of my aunts at that door, including my father, and demanding that they give us, the foster care people give them us, right? And I remember there was a struggle, and I remember my aunt very clearly stating, the state broke the law. This is their father. Why hasn't anybody called their father to tell them that they were here? And I remember a couple phone calls were made, and during that process, it was a matter of, for me, it felt like minutes that we were in the back of the car going back home with our father. And that point, my dad, what was beautiful about his heart and knowing that parents have the best interest in their children, he told my mom, he was giving her unsupervised visits, which were against the court order because, let's be real, she had to go through a certain process to get us kids back. But I remember her being able to come into this home. Imagine a father taking on 3 kids, just being somebody from another country, not having a lot of resources to him. I saw how he did everything possible to get us to a point where he was providing for us. And I thought that was beautiful. But what I did see and I did hear is my dad telling my mom, "I won't control you anymore. Please, let's be a family. I love you. I'm sorry I messed up." And my mom telling him, "Yes, let's be a family. Give me a few more months to be able to go through this process and get better." But in that process, she ended up, I think she was too far gone on drugs. She ended up on the back of a motorcycle, went over a bridge and died. And she was pregnant because both of them were under the influence of drugs. And I saw how it wrecked my dad. But through that process, I saw how my dad, given limited resources, not knowing how to raise kids, did everything possible. And I'm sure most people can say, "Oh, well, that parent doesn't really know," or "that parent doesn't know," or "he doesn't have a lot of whatever." I knew my dad loved us, right? And he worked with us in a point where he knew best. I'm not saying he always made the best decisions. I still joke with him that we raised him. But even during that process, our school was asking him, "Can we counsel your kids?" And coming from another country, a lot of families don't like counseling. They see that as a weakness, right?
I don't care for it. I didn't want to watch it. I don't care. I'm actually waiting for the Paralympics, which I think comes 2 weeks after. Yeah.
Well, I was really hoping there'd be more Dutch reporters roughed up by the police. Just the one, but you hope for more next time, and that's about it.
Well, for me, I gotta say, it's the 2010 golden goal from Sid the Kid. I often remember he's yelling Iggy out of the corner back at the...
Enough, Rob. And what's going on with your wrist there? What's happening with that piece right there?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Oh, I went to this store to do two things, shop and lift, and they were fresh out of shop.